You ever notice how a 3-year-old can learn an entire language without textbooks, yet you struggle to remember what you studied yesterday? What if I told you the secret isn't more studying, it's better pretending? Welcome to the channel. I'm here to show you a mental trick so powerful that it turned confused students into confident explainers. And it works for anything you want to master. Physics, languages, even fixing your car. Stick around till the end, because once you understand this technique, you'll never look at learning the same way again. And if you love ideas that actually work instead of sounding clever, hit that subscribe button. We're going deep into how the world really works, one curious question at a time. So what's the secret? It starts with something surprising. All right, let's start with something that'll probably sound familiar. You're in school, right? And the teacher asks, what makes the sky blue? And some kid raises their hand and says, oh, that's Rayleigh scattering. And the teacher nods, writes it on the board, and everyone thinks, great, we learned something today. But did you? Did you really? See, here's the problem, and this is absolutely crucial if you want to actually learn anything. There's a massive difference between knowing the name of something and understanding the thing itself. And most education, frankly, is just teaching you the names. It's like learning that your neighbor's dog is called Fluffy. Okay, fine. But does knowing its name tell you anything about why it barks, how it runs, or why it loves chasing squirrels? Not really. Let me give you a concrete example from my own childhood. My father used to take me on walks, and we'd see a bird, let's say a brown-throated thrush, and he'd say, you know, in Italian they call that a ciutolapitida. In Portuguese it's a bomda-peda. In Chinese it's a chung long ta. And then he'd look at me and say, now you can know all those names in every language on earth, but when you're finished you'll know absolutely nothing about the bird. You'll only know what people call it in different places. The real question is, what's the bird doing? Why does it peck at the ground like that? How do its wings generate lift? What's going on with the air flowing over those feathers? Now let's bring this back to physics. When you say Rayleigh scattering, what are you actually saying? Most people stop there, but if you understand it, you can see the whole picture. Light from the sun is coming in. These are electromagnetic waves, oscillating electric and magnetic fields traveling through space. When they hit air molecules, those molecules start jiggling around because they're charged. And when charges accelerate, they radiate light in all directions. But here's the key. Smaller wavelengths, like blue light, get scattered way more than longer wavelengths like red. It goes as 1 over wavelength to the 4th power. That's why the sky looks blue during the day and red at sunset. You're seeing what's left after all that blue got scattered away. That's understanding, not the name, the machinery underneath. And here's why this matters for learning anything. When you only know the name, you can't do anything with it. You can't predict what happens next. You can't apply it to a new situation. You're just parroting words. But when you understand the actual mechanism, the gears turning behind the curtain, suddenly you can think with it. You can take it apart, put it back together, see how it connects to other things. So here's my challenge to you. Stop collecting labels. Stop memorizing definitions that sound impressive. Instead, ask yourself, can I explain what's actually happening here? Can I walk someone through the mechanism step by step? If you can't, you don't really know it yet. And that's okay. That's not failure. That's the starting line. Because the moment you realize you don't actually understand something, that's when real learning begins. That's when you stop fooling yourself and start building genuine knowledge from the ground up. Okay, so you've learned the difference between knowing a name and knowing the thing itself. Now comes the really uncomfortable part. The test that most people fail, including me sometimes. And it's this. Can you explain it to someone else in plain language? Not using fancy jargon, not hiding behind technical terms, just, can you make someone else see what you see? Because here's the truth, and this is going to sting a little. If you can't explain something simply, it usually means you don't actually understand it. You might think you do. You might have memorized the textbook. You might be able to pass the exam, but there's still fog in your head, and explaining forces you to see through it. Let me show you what I mean. Let's take something from physics that sounds complicated. Entropy, thermodynamics, second law, all that stuff. You open a textbook and it says, entropy is a measure of the disorder of a system, and then throws equations at you with partial derivatives and logarithms. And you nod along thinking, yeah, okay, disorder, got it. But do you? Try explaining it to your friend who doesn't study physics. Suddenly you realize, wait, what is disorder exactly? Why does it always increase? What does that even mean physically? Here's how I'd explain it. And notice I'm not going to use a single equation. Imagine you have a box divided in half. On one side, you've got 100 red marbles. On the other side, 100 blue marbles. Now you remove the divider and shake the box. What happens? The marbles mix, right? Red and blue all jumbled together. Now here's the question. If you keep shaking, will they ever spontaneously separate back into red on one side, blue on the other? Technically, maybe. There's nothing in the laws of physics that absolutely forbids it. But the odds? Astronomical. Ridiculous. It'll never happen in the lifetime of the universe. Why? Because there are so many more ways for the marbles to be mixed than separated. If you count all possible arrangements, the mixed-up states vastly outnumber the organized ones. And when you shake the box, you're just randomly sampling from all possible arrangements. Entropy is basically counting how many ways can I arrange things. More ways equals higher entropy. The universe naturally drifts toward arrangements that are more probable, and mixed up is almost always more probable than organized. That's entropy. No equations, no mystical disorder. Just counting possibilities and recognizing that nature explores them randomly. Now, when I explain it that way, something interesting happens in my brain. I have to think clearly about each step. I can't skip over the hard parts because my imaginary audience will get confused. And if they're confused, it means I'm confused. I just didn't notice until I tried to explain it. This is why teaching is the best way to learn. Not because you're being generous and helping others, though that's nice, but because teaching exposes every gap in your understanding, every place where you hand wave, every concept you've memorized but never really absorbed. So here's what I want you to do. Pick something you think you understand. Doesn't matter what. Could be physics, could be cooking, whatever. And try explaining it out loud to an imaginary 12-year-old. No jargon allowed. If you find yourself saying, well, it's complicated, or you just have to accept that, stop. That's the sound of not understanding. Go back, figure out what's actually happening. Build the explanation from scratch. And when you can finally make it simple and clear, that's when you know you've got it. That's when learning becomes real. All right, now we're getting to the heart of it. You know the difference between names and understanding. You know that explaining something is the ultimate test. But there's one more thing, maybe the most important thing, and it's this. You are the easiest person to fool. Not your teacher, not your classmates. You. Your own brain will play tricks on you constantly, and if you're not careful, you'll walk around thinking you understand things, when really you're just carrying around comfortable illusions. Let me give you an example from physics that I absolutely love because it catches everyone, even smart people who should know better. Imagine you're holding a ball, and you throw it straight up in the air. It goes up, slows down, stops for an instant at the top, then comes back down. Simple, right? Now here's the question. At the very top of its path, that instant where it stopped before falling back down, is there a force acting on it? Most people say, no, it's not moving, so there's no force. And that sounds reasonable. After all, if something's not moving, why would there be a force? But that's wrong. Dead wrong. And here's the tricky part. Your brain wants to believe it's right because it feels right. The truth is, gravity is pulling on that ball the entire time. At the bottom, when you're holding it, when it's flying upward. At the very top, when it's momentarily still. And on the way back down. The force never stops. What changes is the velocity, the speed and direction of motion. At the top, the velocity is 0 for an instant, but the force, still there, still pulling downward at 9.8 meters per second squared. If there were no force at the top, the ball would just float there. It wouldn't know to come back down. The force is what causes it to turn around. Now, why do people get this wrong? Because we confuse motion with force. We see something moving and think, aha, there must be a force. We see something still and think, no force. But that's not how Newton's laws work. Forces cause changes in motion, accelerations. A thing can be moving at constant velocity with 0 net force on it, or it can be momentarily still with a huge force acting on it. This is what I mean by fooling yourself. You had an intuition. No motion means no force. And you trusted it without checking. Your brain gave you an answer that felt right, and you accepted it. But nature doesn't care about what feels right. Nature just does what it does. So here's the discipline you need. When you think you understand something, test it. Not by asking yourself, does this feel right? But by asking, what would actually happen if this were true? Push on your ideas. Look for the edge cases. Try to break them. In science, we do this with experiments. But in learning, you do it by asking tough questions. Okay, I think I understand this. So what would happen if I change this one thing? What's a situation where my explanation might fail? And when you find a crack, When you discover that your understanding doesn't hold up, don't panic, don't get defensive, celebrate, because you just caught yourself fooling yourself, and that's the only way to get to real understanding. The first principle is this: you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. So be brutally honest, question your own understanding, test your intuitions against reality, because at the end of the day, nature is the ultimate teacher, and she doesn't grade on a curve. She just shows you what's true, whether it fits your intuition or not. And that's exactly where real learning happens. Okay, so you're not fooling yourself anymore. You're testing your understanding. You're explaining things clearly. But now comes the practical question. How do you actually build understanding in the first place? Where do you even start? And the answer is surprisingly simple. You start at the bottom, the very bottom, with the most basic ideas you can be absolutely sure about. Then you build upward, piece by piece, making sure each step is solid before you move to the next one. Let me show you what I mean with something concrete. Let's say you want to understand how a radio works. Now you could open a textbook and it'll throw words at you. Electromagnetic waves, modulation, resonant circuits, and your eyes glaze over. You memorize the definitions, pass the test, and walk away understanding nothing. Or you could build it from the ground up. Start here. Moving electric charges create magnetic fields. That's step one. You can check this yourself with a battery, a wire, and a compass. Run current through the wire, watch the compass needle move. There's your foundation: solid, observable, undeniable. Step 2. If a changing magnetic field passes through a loop of wire, it pushes electrons around that loop. It creates a current. You can test this too. Move a magnet near a coil. Watch a meter register current. This is called electromagnetic induction, but forget the name for a second. Just know that it happens. Now combine those two facts. If I wiggle electrons back and forth in one wire really fast, they create a changing magnetic field. That changing field can induce wiggling electrons in another wire nearby, even if the wires don't touch. I've just sent a signal through empty space. Do this millions of times per second, and congratulations, you've just invented radio. That's it. That's the whole thing, built up from two simple facts about electricity and magnetism. See how different that feels? You didn't memorize radio waves propagate through space at the speed of light. You constructed the idea from pieces you actually understand. And now when someone asks you how radio works, you can rebuild the explanation from scratch because you know where each piece comes from. This is how you should approach everything you want to learn. Don't start by accepting complicated explanations. Don't trust the textbook when it jumps 10 steps ahead. Back up. Find the simplest thing you're absolutely certain about. Then ask, what can I build from this? In physics, we do this all the time. Newton didn't start with planetary orbits. He started with objects in motion stay in motion unless something pushes them. That's so simple, it's almost boring. But from that one idea, plus a few others just as simple, you can derive the motion of planets, the trajectory of a cannonball, why satellites stay in orbit, everything. Here's what's beautiful about building from the ground up. When you get stuck, and you will get stuck, you know exactly where the problem is. You can trace back through your chain of reasoning and find the weak link. You can't do that if you've just memorized a bunch of disconnected facts. And here's the other thing. When you build your own understanding from fundamentals, it sticks. You don't forget it next week. You don't need to cram before exams, because it's not stored in your brain as isolated facts. It's woven together into a structure where each piece supports the others. So pick something you want to understand, doesn't matter what. And instead of starting with the complicated final result, ask yourself, what's the simplest possible starting point? What's the most basic thing I know for sure? Start there. Build one step at a time. It's slower at first. It feels harder. But you end up with something real, something you truly own. And that's worth infinitely more than memorizing 1,000 facts you'll forget tomorrow. All right, we've come to the final piece. And this is where everything clicks together. You've learned not to fool yourself. You've built understanding from the ground up. But how do you know, really know, that you've got it? Here's the ultimate test, and it's beautifully simple. Can you create it yourself? Not just explain it, not just derive it. Actually build it from scratch, with nothing but your understanding and maybe some basic tools. Because if you can create something, if you can make it work with your own hands and your own reasoning, then you truly understand it. And if you can't, well, then you've got more work to do. Let me give you an example that's close to my heart. When I was learning quantum mechanics, which is notoriously weird and confusing, I didn't just read the textbook and nod along. I tried to recreate the key results myself. Starting from the basic postulates, could I derive the behavior of a particle in a box? Could I work out why electrons in atoms have discrete energy levels? And here's what happened. I'd get stuck, constantly. I'd think I understood something, start working through it and hit a wall, and that's good, because that wall shows you exactly where your understanding breaks down. You can't hide from it. You can't fake your way through it. Let's bring this down to earth with something more tangible. Say you want to understand how a simple electric motor works. You can read about it, magnets, coils, commutators, all that. You can watch animations, you can memorize the explanation. But do you understand it? Here's the test. Build one. Get some wire, a battery, a magnet, and make it spin. And I mean actually do it, don't just imagine it. Because when you try to build it, you'll immediately encounter questions you never thought about. Which way should I wind the coil? Where exactly does the magnet go? Why does it need to flip the current direction halfway through each rotation? When you actually put your hands on it, when you try to make it work, suddenly all those details that seemed minor become critical, and wrestling with those details, that's where understanding lives. Not in the abstract explanation, but in the concrete reality of making something function. Here's what I'm really saying. Understanding isn't passive. It's not something you absorb by reading or listening. Understanding is active. It's a verb, not a noun. You understand something when you can use it as a tool, when you can manipulate it, combine it with other things, make it do what you want. Think about it this way. You don't truly understand cooking until you can look in the refrigerator, see what you've got, and make something delicious without a recipe. You don't understand programming until you can sit down with a blank screen and create something functional. And you don't understand physics until you can take the principles and build predictions, solve new problems, create working devices. This is why I always tell people, don't just study, do something with what you're learning. If you're learning about waves, calculate what happens when two waves collide. Build a ripple tank and watch it happen. If you're learning about circuits, grab some components and wire something up. If you're learning about forces, figure out the mechanics of your bicycle and why it doesn't fall over when you're riding it. Creation is the proof of understanding. And here's the beautiful thing. When you can create something, when you can build it from first principles and make it work, you feel it. There's this click in your brain where everything suddenly makes sense. Not because someone told you it makes sense, but because you've made it make sense through your own effort. So here's my final challenge to you. Take something you think you understand and try to create it. Build it, derive it, construct it from scratch. And if you can't, don't get discouraged. You've just found your next learning project, because what you cannot create, you do not yet understand. And what you can create, that's yours forever. So let's bring this all home. You now know the secret, and it's not really a secret at all. It's just something most people never bother to do because it's harder than memorizing, and it forces you to be honest with yourself. Here it is in one breath. Stop collecting labels and start understanding mechanisms. Test yourself by explaining things simply. Don't fool yourself. Question everything, especially your own intuitions. Build your knowledge from the ground up, one solid piece at a time. And finally, prove you understand by creating something. Derive it, build it, make it work with your own reasoning. That's it. That's how you force your mind to learn anything. Not by studying harder, but by studying smarter. Not by cramming more information in, but by building real understanding from the bottom up. And here's the thing, this works for everything. Physics, languages, music, cooking, programming, you name it. The principles are universal because they're based on how understanding actually works, not on some educational theory or motivational gimmick. Will it be easy? No. Will it be faster than memorizing? Not at first. But what you build will be real. It'll stick with you. You'll be able to use it, apply it, combine it with other things you know. You won't be faking your way through anymore. You'll actually understand. And honestly, that's when learning stops being a chore and starts being one of the most exciting things you can do. Because suddenly, the world opens up. You see how things connect. You can figure out new things just by thinking them through. You become genuinely capable, not just credentialed. So if you want more of this, more ideas explained clearly, more curiosity-driven explorations of how the world actually works, no BS, no hand-waving, just honest thinking about interesting questions, hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started. There's so much beautiful stuff to understand out there. Let's figure it out together. Thanks for watching. Now go build something. Hey, thanks for sticking around till the end. I really mean that. Look, if even one thing I said today makes you look at learning differently, makes you stop and think, wait, do I actually understand this, or am I just repeating words? Then we've done something worthwhile here. Learning is one of the great joys in life, not the kind where you're stressed about grades or trying to impress people, but the real kind, where you're genuinely curious about how something works and you dig in until it makes sense. That feeling when it all clicks, there's nothing quite like it. So keep asking questions, keep testing yourself, keep building things, and don't be afraid to admit when you don't understand something yet. That's not a weakness. That's just the beginning of understanding. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Keep thinking, keep curious. Take care.